Hey folks, welcome to the KCNA Kubernetes Fundamentals Prep 2. Today I'm joined by Mohammed. Mohammed, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Thank you, Brad. And really thanks for organizing this. It's actually a pleasure to be here. Happy to be involved in the KCNA prep team. And yeah, so just want to say thanks once again to all the setting this up. Also, thanks to Waleed for starting this off last 2 weeks, actually. It's pretty good. Pleasure to be here. So I'm basically a platform engineer, and daily, sometimes I work as an SRE also, site reliability engineer, and do a task with that. And pretty much that's what daily basis. But outside of that, I enjoy doing community works like this kind of stuff, help the community, and those getting into tech and so on, pretty much. And I really enjoy working with the cloud native system. I like how it all connects together. So that's pretty much brief about me. Active on LinkedIn, trying to get active on Twitter. So if you have any questions or anything, feel free to reach out. But without further ado, should we begin?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. And you're based out of London, is it?
Yeah, in London. Yep.
Yeah. And what sort of cloud do you normally work with? Is it AWS?
Yeah. Commonly AWS. I've touched a bit of Azure, GCP not so much, but I look forward to using that in the near future.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. Yeah, Wally did such a great job last week, didn't he? It
Yeah, it was
amazing.
amazing.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, would you like to share a screen? We'll go over your repo maybe.
Yeah, sure. Just give me 1 minute. Where is it?
Sure.
Um,
I'll put a link on the screen soon as well, but amazing work with the repo. I went over it a few times and it's really comprehensive.
Thank you. Share screen. Can I do tab? Where is it? Okay.
If you share screen, I can put it in there. Yeah, here we go.
Cool. How's it? Is it clear? Yeah.
Yep, looks good to me. I'll just actually I'll flip you into the second. There you go.
Yeah. So just a brief about this and why I made it. And I was first of all, thanks to Willie. I was inspired by him because he did great work in the CKA preparation and CKS. He has similar repos as well. You can have a look. I've referenced it at the bottom somewhere. Yeah, here. The reason why I create this because first of all, when this exam first came out, there weren't many resources that existed that community can benefit from that were free actually. So I thought, let me just begin and start off and just create a repo that the community can use and benefit from. And essentially, just basically a documentation of notes and curated resources that I've collected together. So and this is not from my own, random selections, but I literally based it off the actual syllabus. So and I assume Walid already mentioned it, how the exam works. But I'll do a quick review. Essentially, the exam 1.5. The passing score is pretty high, 75%, and compared to other AWS certs and Azure certs, pretty similar. Valid for 3 years. It's cheaper than the CK and CKS, and essentially it's for people who are new to or starting into the cloud native ecosystem and getting into it and so on. So it essentially gets you in the, we can say, vibes of the cloud native and gets you up ready, because the CK and CKS can be quite hard for someone who's new. So I think cloud native community foundation have done a great job actually setting this up, and the syllabus is very, how do I say, there's a lot of breadth as compared to depth. So meaning that people is has high overview of the ecosystem. So essentially you got 5 topics: Kubernetes fundamentals, orchestration, the general architecture. The cloud native is quite big, so there's a lot. The observability for some Prometheus and all these monitoring tools and so on, and application delivery. So that's the 5 topics. So what I've done was literally, and the syllabus itself, they break things down. So as Walid mentioned, the curriculum here is, so they broke it down into topics, and that's exactly what I did in the repo. So as you can see, I've broken it down to parts 1.1, the first topic, and so on. So I'm still adding into it. So whoever's using this repo, feel free to make pull requests. Happy to improve them. So it's fairly new, but at the same time, it is ready. It can be said that it can be used for revision purposes and preparation. But let's quickly get back to the topic today. The topic today was the API server. Where was it? So that's my topic today. Just bear with me.
I like what you said as well about the depth of it as well. So it is covering a lot more stuff, but it is more high level.
Yeah. So in the sense that people, it's similar to the sense that the AWS exam and the Azure exams they've pretty much similar. They start with associate, they get an individual prepped up and started, high over knowledge, what is the service and so on, and then it gets deeper. So I assume in the near future, CNCF are probably going to do professional cert and levels above. So it's a good place to start. But let's come back to a repo. We'll quickly go through the API server. Is that okay?
Yeah,
Brad?
yeah, for sure.
I think that was the topic today, isn't it?
Yeah,
Right?
yeah, we can go over anything you want, really. I mean, yeah.
We'll just get back. Yeah, we'll come back to repo. Let's quickly go through the API server. Or we can do, API. This one. Where is it?
I guess another great thing is like when you're doing these, like the documentation is so great, and when you're prepping for your CKD, your CKA, your CKS, etc., the documentation is your go-to because you're allowed to use that in the actual exam. So I guess to help prepare for that in the KCNA, you can use, like, really leverage the documentation, make your bookmarks, and just get really comfortable with navigating through it.
That's the one thing I think the CNs have actually done a good job in, that like allowing documentation, as opposed to other exams where you memorize a lot of things. With Kubernetes, you don't have to. You got documentation access, like you said.
Yeah.
It makes things easier,
And it's more real world as well, right? Because like if you do, like, let's say Azure certification, you have to. It doesn't really test your cloud skills; it tests your memory because you've got to memorize all this stuff. Whereas here in the real world, you're always going to go to, like, I go to documentation every day. I can't
Exactly.
remember everything, so it's really real world, and that's what I really like about it.
Yes, 100%. I agree with that. CKA has done a lot. Like help CKA and CKS doing those sets has done a lot for my daily job. So like I can actually say that I'm actually implementing, the actual official documentation, using that for reference, and it's pretty good in that sense.
Yeah, they're doing some really good stuff too. Like they're translating it into Hindi, and it's so
Okay.
impressive to see open source. Like, it's one of the best documentations I've seen as well. So yeah,
So
shout out
far,
to all the contributors.
definitely. What languages have they got so far? Languages, or
I think that I know they're definitely doing Hindi. There's probably maybe even a couple people on here that are in that work stream,
yeah.
or that working group. And I'm not sure the rest, but let me find out while you're doing the story.
Sure. And definitely is very. That's a good thing about open source. Like people can just help for the out of their own goodness and will. So it's very nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's quickly come back to the repo. Anyways, Wade mentioned the architecture last week, I assume, right? So we're just going to talk about a small bit, which is the API server. So as you know, the API server is one of the core parts, or you can say, of the control plane. A control plane is a master or the main thing in like. So essentially, think about the API server as a gateway to your cluster. So someone who, for example, a human being, has access to cluster, they have to communicate through using the API. So basically, the API server, what it does is, it will get a bit quite technical, but if I get, just stop me if I get a bit too technical, and we can explain and so on. But essentially, the API server, so let's go back to that. Yeah. So what it does basically, it implements as it says here, uses a RESTful API, right? And it uses it over HTTP. And this means that basically every API request is an HTTP request, if that makes sense. And what it does is and this is where the SCD also comes in. SCD basically is the database, or where your data is stored for all the cluster database, essentially where it's stored. So for example, the API will have to check the SCD that something, a pod or deployment, actually exists, and it confirms with that. So let's say, for example, we create an object. The object could be a pod, a deployment, and we have to create it through command line kubectl, right? So the API server, it will store this data, and interact with other components to see that the pod and deployment actually exists there. So essentially how it works is basically, let's say I want to create a pod or deployment, right? That how do I explain it? So let's say I have to use a Kubernetes API to create the object, so you create the pod deployment, and the API request that is made initially it has to be in a JSON format, but people normally use YAML. But the kubectl itself is the things that converts the JSON to a YAML, and then it creates that object. So it could be the pod or deployment and so on. And there's a workflow that I saw somewhere online. It's quite interesting how the API server, because all these things are deep underlying, in the system. So for example, when I created pod or deployment, some people don't really know what actually happens inside, but we'll quickly go through it today on a high level. And here's a simple flow that I usually speak about how it works. So basically, you do kubectl. The kubectl, it sends a HTTP request, right, to the API server. The API server then validates that request and it stores in the etcd. So meaning that, so if, for example, if the pods already exist, etcd should show that it exists and it will reject it. It means it will not work. However, it doesn't exist, you put in the etcd and it says that now it exists, right? And the etcd then notifies back the API server. Okay. So let's say we want to create a deployment. The deployment controller observes first of all the state of the cluster through the etcd, because you can see what is there, right? And then once it creates that state and it stores it in the etcd. Now it's created. Then the API server invokes the scheduler. So it says that, okay, now you have to create it. And the scheduler is basically what, creates the pods and so on. Then the scheduler decides which node. So obviously you've got different nodes, right? Then the scheduler will decide what node it should be hosted on, because maybe one node is full or it's gotten some node affinity or something. So then it might, for example, place it on the second node because this one's full and third one's full for any reason. All right. Once the scheduler places it on the correct node, then the API server also speaks to the etcd. Then it shows, okay, now it actually exists. Then the etcd also notifies back the API server. So that's the overall on a high level, how under behind the scenes what actually happens when you create a pod. I know it can get more technical, and I don't want to go too deep. Maybe some are beginners here, so that's on a high level how it works, right? And I will share with you guys an image that I've also saw online, where just to illustrate how the API server and the Kube API and all objects, how they interlink. So I'll share this after with you guys. And in Kubernetes, you've got a list of resources, right? So for example, if I type in the command line kubectl API resources, right, there are different types of resources. Like for example, a pod is a resource, deployment is a resource, services, all these are resources, and it will tell you what each resource does and so on, right?
That's a good one. That was my cheat sheet for the other exams as well. When I put it in the set, it'll just come up with all the things that you can use. And yeah, I found the kubectl API resource is really helpful.
Yeah, in case you forget, like even the good thing about it is, if you forget a shortcut, for example, when you write the pod has a shortcut PO, netpol has a shortcut for netpol service SVC. You can use that API resources to check, and so on. And also Kubernetes, the good thing about open source is they have something called API versions. So it means that when a new resource is released into a system, they will go through a set of stages, for example, in development and so on. But they have a system where they have, for example, V1 alpha, V1 beta, just before it goes to the actual stable release. So V1, for example, a pod itself will have, obviously we use apps V1, right? But before that, there's other ones where it uses V1 beta alpha for testing purposes and so on. There's also something else that is used nowadays, but some people don't really understand how it works. So it's called custom resource definitions, right? And those they're more deeper in the sense that those are not actually created, but are not default already created. They are created by others individuals, and they actually use, how do I say it? What's the word? How do I say it? So in this, I'm trying to explain it in simple terms. CRDs. How do you explain it, Brad? CRDs.
CIDs.
Yeah.
So let me think away. I guess you buy a car and then you want to customize it, so you put in some subwoofers and a stereo, and that would be your CRD. And then you
Yeah.
can find the list on that. You have a book of all the money you've spent on your car and what you have in it, and then you can reference that list as well.
Perfect. Thank you. That's basically in simple terms, as simple as it gets. Thank you.
That's what I just came up with on the spot. But yeah, I guess just
Yeah.
a way to customize something. It's really powerful, so simple and powerful, because creating a CID it essentially lets you bring your own logic and applications into Kubernetes by using the same API. So
Yeah.
it's very cool. Have you
And
played around with building any yet?
I haven't built any, but I use it quite often. Sometimes at work here and there. So one of them was, I think it was a Prometheus rule. So we have Prometheus set up on our clusters, right, for monitoring. And there was one, it was Prometheus rule. So that is a CRD itself, and it's created by external. And these are all open source. That's a good thing about it. You can, but I'm at the moment I'm still learning Golang, so I can actually contribute to the open source community, because Golang is not my strength yet. So maybe once I learn that, I can start creating some CRDs and.
Yeah, cool.
Should we move on?
Can we go back to let's go back to the repo, and
Yeah,
I
sure.
find it's going to be really helpful for people. So we have, let's go down to Kubernetes. What else do we have in there?
So I'm still adding on to it. So at the moment we've got the fundamentals, and I'm adding slowly definitions. So these are, for example, a pod. What is a pod on a high level? And the reference, of course, I've got them from the official Kubernetes documentation, and a reference at the bottom. So these are correct definitions that you can refer to. So what is a pod, for example? It says right there, deployments, so on, services, replica sets on a high level, basically. And you've got 3 types of services: node, port, load balancer, cluster IP, and external name, which is not often used, but it's still one of the services. Replica sets, and people can confuse replica sets and deployments, but essentially, how do you differentiate deployment and replica set? If I'd ask you that.
Deployment and replica set. I guess the replica set lives inside the deployment, doesn't it? From memory. So the replica set is saying how many. Yeah, I guess we need to maybe look at a diagram of some pods. But
Yeah, I think.
essentially it will say, generally so let's say that you have one or many pods. So if you define that you want 3 pods, so a replica set will ensure that you always have 3 pods working at the same time. So it's like a grouping of pods.
Yeah. I'm thinking maybe we should add another topic where it says difference between replica set deployments, because it used to get mixed up between them, isn't it?
Yeah. They used to have another, I can't remember the name for it, but something before they did replica sets that was deprecated.
Yes, they did. Yes.
But yeah, I guess there's on CodeCloud, there's a really good explanation of the deployments and replica sets as well that I recommend people. Did you use CodeCloud when you studied for your exam?
Yeah, a lot of it actually for CKS and CKA, and a bit of, was it Kim Vuskamp? He's pretty good.
Yeah.
Looked at him as well. So these are the fundamentals. I'm also adding a few commands. These are commands that actually are using the CKA, for example. Simple commands: how to get the pods, how to get pods, all namespaces. And this is the one I was referring to earlier, API resources. So this, once you put that in your command line, it will list essentially all the resources that exist, whether the namespace.
Another good one as well is kubectl -h for help, and the help command is really useful as well, because that will sort of write it for you almost.
Exactly. Yeah, 100%. If you get stuck in emergency, use that. Yeah, thanks for that. How to run a pod, a simple pod, for example. How to create deployment with the image, and then another one with the image, but in replicas. So his was a reference to replica sets, so 5 replicas and so on, right? So we're still adding more things to this. So if you have any useful commands that can be added in for the community, feel free to make a pull request, add it in.
Yeah, I can add some in later on actually.
Definitely,
I have a
yeah.
few to add in.
Spam those pull requests.
And should we quickly show the folks on the documentation of kubectl cheat sheet?
Oh
That's
yeah,
quite
yeah,
a
yeah.
good study
Sure,
guide as well.
definitely.
So I spent a lot of my time on this as well when I was learning.
He's really
I'm
good.
sure you did as well.
100%. Can you send on the chat here, or is there comments?
Yeah. I'll find it and I'll
Cool.
chuck it in there as well.
Yeah, so this is actually pretty good actually. Make it smaller. So essentially, this will come in. But I think nowadays you don't need to autocomplete for the exams, right? These are already done, isn't it, for the new exams?
Yeah, I mean it's still good to register in your head by seeing all the commands and things as well. But you can use I mean for the CKD and that anyway. I guess one
Yeah.
thing that I don't know if folks know, but the KCNA is multi-choice and it's not hands-on, whereas the other exams are, in the terminal, very hands-on. Probably the most hands-on exam I've ever done. Well, yeah, it definitely is.
Yeah. I think leave it for now, then autocomplete. What do you want to go through? Was there something specific on you want to go through or this?
No, just like high level, like, like this, for example. So this is a great place to get started as well, because generally when you want to connect to a cluster, you need your kubeconfig. So
Yeah.
I mean, I forget this sometimes as well, like the difference between use and set, and it's just, even I go back to this sometimes as well.
There is a trick you can I don't really use often in production. What I do, there's something called there's an open source tool. It's called kubectx.
Yeah.
Yes, that's a lazy way basically.
I've been I really want to use all those like DevX tools that help me. There's like Cube Color as well, which is quite cool.
What's that
I think
for?
there's
Cube
about
color.
it makes your command like it makes it, like when you have like a table, how it's like different colors each row, like
Yeah.
just to make it easy on your eyes. So Cube Color does that, and it's a really good tool actually. I can show you later. Yeah, I'll put it on the screen as well.
Yeah, definitely. I'm definitely gonna try that one. Sounds interesting. So if you want, you can pair on with this on your command line. But for not KCNA, I don't really think you need this as much, right?
I guess like for me, I think KCNA is still you still need to learn quite a lot of things, but I would recommend people, if you haven't had hands-on experience with Kubernetes, then you should, because it'll test your, like you said before, like the depth and the breadth of it. So yeah, I think that you should be playing around on your own cluster. You can use K3s or Minikube, Kind. There's so many lightweight distributions as well. So you don't even need to have a fancy computer these days. You can run it on anything.
Literally,
So
exactly.
yeah, so make a Hello World app even like would be good, and you can just play around with this, and that will get you interested and enjoying it as well. And then once you're interested, you study more and you just get right into it. So yeah,
Sorry about that.
that's okay.
Yeah, so overview, config view, then applying, for example. Give me 1 minute actually.
Sure. So here we can see that we have kubectl apply. So create and apply is how you create your manifest. So you have your manifest on the computer, and then you're defining that in YAML, and then you use create to deploy that into your cluster that you're pointed to.
Yep. So you can just, even another one that's actually pretty good. Explains a very good one. Where you can explain the pods. For example, if you don't know what a pod is or deployment, you just put that in, and it will just explain to you what this resource is. But essentially, that's a very useful one as well.
Yeah, I use that on one of my exams because in that time, it was quite a while ago I did it, but the documentation wasn't updated as well. So it was something to do with storage of, I can't quite remember, but it didn't have it in the doc. So I used explain to know to where to put it in the YAML.
Was it storage class?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, but it was like a specific. It was a very specific thing of storage class that you don't really use.
Okay.
So I had to use explain to remember what it was. Yeah.
Yeah, that comes in really handy as well. Explain.
Mm.
What else? Just generally putting in creating a secret here, creating a pod using the uf command. I think that's very specific though. And then this is very useful. So getting services, for example, listing all the services.
One thing one thing with secrets up there, I didn't actually know this till quite recently. Actually, you know, you have data, and you in the exam I was always base 64 encoding it. But if you put string data, then you don't need to do that. The kubectl will do that for you. So
That
it's
is
like,
very
oh,
useful.
that's very, very useful. And I can't believe that for a long time I was doing base 64 encoding. Yeah.
Is it on here, by the way, string data or no?
Not on that one. It just says data, but
Okay.
yeah, it makes it so much easier putting string data.
Yeah. No, this is definitely a good place. Actually, another good place. Also, I think there's another place where I can link back to is really good. So if you go to kubectl commands, this one's really good. So for example, if I want to create a cluster, for example, I can just go here and give me examples. And this is allowed in the exam, by the way. So this is like in times of emergency, this comes in really handy.
I guess it's not allowed for the KCNA though.
Yeah.
Only
It's
the
not.
other ones.
Yeah. But
Just to make sure
reference.
folks don't go and think that they can use this in the exam.
Yeah, that's true. It's just good to know, isn't it?
Definitely, yeah.
Is there anything else we need to speak about in here, or that is good to
No, I
mention?
just think in general, like this is a really good one. Like it's pretty much how I learned Kubernetes when I first started off. I didn't do any courses or training or anything. I just, I had an app that I needed to do, and I used a lot of this to learn it. That's pretty much how I made my first, deployment.
No, it's really good. Yeah, it comes really handy. Have you put the link for this, or?
I put it, yeah.
Cool,
I'll put it into
fine.
the chat as well.
Yeah, back to the repo. What's that?
We just have a couple questions, so
Yeah, sure.
I'll check them on the screen. So the first one from Cisco V. Good afternoon, gents. At the KCNA level, is there any advantage in creating aliases for commands upon entering the exam? So would you like to answer that or me?
Hey, go for it. It's fine.
Yeah, so aliases for commands. So I assume you're saying like alias k equals kubectl or something like that. In this exam, you don't actually need to be typing any command line at all. It's purely multi-choice. And you might have to, from memory, I think you have to, they'll ask you a question and you put it in the box. But yeah, you definitely don't need to use aliases in the exam. And then for KCNA, how much of the cheat sheet do you need to learn? I would be pretty comfortable with it. I think I wouldn't be in a hurry to do the exam. Just really take your time to learn it. And I found that the logging came up quite a bit in the exam as well. So make sure that you do go through the logging section, and obviously all of it. But yeah, it's really helpful, and it will really help you learn. I mean, most engineers that are working with Kubernetes will spend their day in kubectl debugging, so it's really good. Would you like to answer this one?
Time frame, that's a very subjective question. I think that depends on the person itself. If you're really new to the whole ecosystem, the exam, I'd probably say give yourself a solid month, maybe just go, because like I said, the exam has a lot of breadth as compared to depth. There's like a wide range of things to learn, like GitOps, the architecture. So I say a solid month is pretty good. That's for like an average person.
Yeah,
You can do
I
it
would say
quicker,
3 months.
maybe longer. 3 months?
I would say 3, but that's personally. But
Yeah.
yeah, everyone has different opinions and different. Yeah, I mean,
In between 1 to 3 months.
yeah, exactly. That sounds perfect. So when I study as well, I do like 2 hour blocks, because if you're only going to do half an hour here and there, it takes you 10 minutes to get into it, 10 minutes to remember what you're studying. And if you're doing 3 months, maybe not every day, take a day off, but just do like I normally do it 2 hours each night, and then I'll just do like, what do you call it, when you study right before the exam, like cram sessions as well. Yeah, so it depends on how much you want to put in, and also how much experience you have. Like, for example, when I studied for KCNA, I just studied about 5 hours, because most people don't need to if you're, but I wanted to go through it, and I actually learned some really great things that I didn't know before as well. Like, I learned a lot about sort of, the high level, and the open standards was very fascinating for me. The interfaces, how it all came about with the all those open standards was really interesting for me. And another question, for someone who is not a developer, how difficult is KCNA? So, what are your thoughts?
Who's not a developer? I'd say it's not too hard, not too easy. Say probably mid. It's not really. If you understand these concepts, like for example, pods deployment at a high level, and you can, because the KCNA essentially is supposed to get you in and started into cloud native ecosystem on a high level, because it does get deeper and deeper, but this is very high level. So I don't think it's too easy, no, it's too hard. If you follow the right preparation, of course, with these, repos, and just basically study the syllabus, and you have got an understanding by the end. So I don't think it's too difficult. I'd like to say it's easy because of the fact that it gives people motivation, and that it can be done.
Yeah,
So like you said,
yeah, I would say you don't need to. You definitely don't need to be a developer.
100%, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And then we've got some more questions, and thanks everyone for the questions. This is what really makes it good. So, hey everyone, I've not kept up with certification since I've done CKS. How was the exam compared to CKA or CKS? Or it's more a beginner friendly or developer oriented like CKA? Yeah, it's built for entry level certification, so it is much easier than doing the CKA and CKS. I also feel, it's still good for people that have done CKA and CKS, because it does give you that. It goes down back to a little bit of history about the CNCF and the ecosystem as well. So it is a good foundation to have. And then, generally, when folks say like, why should I do KCNA? I personally, I don't need to do it to get a job or anything, but I did it to help, other engineers skill up in Kubernetes and cloud as well. So it is good for, juniors and seniors as well. Would you like to add anything to that?
Just to add, yeah, like what you said is perfect, honest with you. But just another extra benefit is that the CNCF, they have two sets of exams now. They have the hands-on, and they've got this high-level multiple choice, and I think it's really good because, like, as compared to AWS, Amazon, Azure, all the exams are pretty much multiple choice questions. But Linux Foundation, they brought the best of both. So you have exam where you actually learn theory and so on, and then you have a practical exam. Same as the driving test, for example, you have a theory and a practical exam, and you get the best of both in that sense. Because sometimes when you prepare for CK alone, it's all hands-on. You might not get a deep understanding of something, but KCNA actually lets you know how does the architecture work. For example, in the CK exam, you don't have to understand how the architecture works. That makes sense. But KCNA,
Yeah.
kind of, you have to understand that, if that makes sense. So
I like what you said about the driving lesson, how you could do your theory then your practical. It's a
yeah,
good analogy. We've got a bit of a car analogy today.
yeah.
Yeah, cool. Okay, that's all the questions for now. Thanks
You
for
can.
asking everybody.
Thank you, guys. So back to repo basically. So like I said, there's different topics. We're still adding resources into a repo. Okay, it's components, and here's like a small build up of the components, what each component does. And this, I think, is very important to understand what each component does, because this essentially is what makes up the Kubernetes. Moving on, you got containers, and when you hear containers, you think Docker. But just to let you know, Docker has been deprecated, and you got other runtimes that are being used. So essentially, containers are, how do I explain it? So people can confuse with containers and virtual machines. They're both isolated environments in the sense that they can be used for example, a lot of companies nowadays, they use this containers. So I wrote a nice article on containers actually that you can, where was it? That you can read on, and it explains essentially what are containers. So I'll send this through. Maybe people can read it, and you'll give a better understanding of containers. And
How often do you do blogs?
so end of 2021, I was doing actually quite a lot. I was writing a lot of things actually, but then I got busy. But I'm thinking of writing a few more actually.
I'm trying to do one a month now.
I think that's a good target. Before I was doing too much. I was doing two a month, but it can get because you need to sit down and think about what you're gonna write and make notes and so on. I think one a month is pretty good.
Yeah. You don't want to annoy people by like spamming them with blogs like once a week as well, I guess. Well, that's good, but I think once a month is good.
That's good. Yeah, just enough. Containers, scheduling, and I'll definitely say understand the difference between containers and virtual machines. I can't explain that, but I'll get a bit too deep. What's that?
Yeah, and I guess like even though people talk about Docker deprecated, I guess we still do need to learn it. It's not to say that we shouldn't learn Docker, but it's good to look at the CNCF landscape website as well and just see the other runtimes, and I find that's quite a good high level of the projects that you need to know. And generally in the exam, the one you do like the ones that are graduated or incubated as well. So you don't need to learn like, whatever, how many there are, like 200 or something crazy.
Yeah. Now, at the moment, that's good you mentioned it, clarifying it, because you have to of course understand how containers work, and Docker basically explains that. But we're using at the moment we're using Rancher for work and so on. Rancher is pretty open source, and it's pretty straightforward. Except that it's free now. Scheduling. So that's pretty much chapter 1, right? And then you got chapter 2. I think you have sessions for these, right, coming up, isn't it?
So there's some sessions coming up. Yeah.
And pretty much more, topics. So point 1, container orchestration, essentially what is Kubernetes and how it works. But then other than that, you got what was it? What was the other name? What was the other one? Was it OpenShift?
OpenShift. Yeah.
OpenShift. I haven't used that much, but that's another one. Obviously Kubernetes dominates it, and that's owned by what was it? Red Hat. Red Hat. That's it. Yeah. Then runtimes is to understand how other container runtimes work and so on. Then we got security. That point is very important actually for especially cloud native, because it is quite easy. And there's actually one whole cert dedicated to that for CKS. So it's good to understand how it works. And this is essentially how the overall security of, and they call it the 4 C's. It's quite good how they named it. How your code must be secure, container security, cluster security, and overall cloud security. So it's very nice how they did this. We can read more into that if you want. Cluster security and just more, RBAC and general, So this is definitely a good place to look at as well. Networking, this is I'll say one of the hardest topics in Kubernetes.
For sure.
Normally networking is hard, but then with Kubernetes security, it makes it even more. So definitely study that as well. Service mesh, fairly new concept, but it's quite nice how it actually goes into. So definitely reading that at the same time. There's a nice architecture here of how it works. You have to install for example, Istio, how they do it. You have to install sidecar container into your cluster onto one of your nodes. or into a pod actually, right? How it works, isn't it?
Yeah, to a
And then
pod.
and that's how it sends data, and it shows you how the interconnection between other pods and services are, storage, so persistent volumes. That comes also as as part of the exam, isn't it? Storage is quite a big part, PVs and PVCs.
Yeah, I guess not in the KCNA one though.
Not
But
KCNA.
and well, it is, but not. You don't have to go too deep in. I guess looking at this, like as a beginner, it could be quite overwhelming. So, what's your advice to sort of focus in on when studying instead of going like, okay, I've got to learn 100 things. I find that a lot of folks at the moment they're a little bit confused about how to, you know, to learn all of this overwhelming stuff.
Yeah.
What do you think you would do first?
But if you're especially new to this, don't be on board. I know there's a lot of links, but this is only for like the overall community. So if you get, for example,
Mm,
learning runtimes, don't read every link. You don't have to do that. Maybe start with the first one. If
mm,
that makes sense to you and you're happy with it, move on. If you don't understand
yeah,
something, there are other links that, for example, you can have, like to take a deeper look and so on. So don't look at every link. Not every link is like enough.
yeah,
As in, like one is sometimes enough. It depends how you understand. If, for example, security is not enough for you, there's more links you can read into, and so on.
mm,
But just pick normally the first one is the ones that I normally recommend because those are the ones that are straight to
okay,
the either documentation, and then if you get stuck, there's more links that can help. Same for
yeah,
service
good to
mesh.
know.
Yeah. What would you say?
Yeah,
What do you recommend?
yeah, I guess going onto the ecosystem a little bit first, learning like the easy parts, like the governance of the CNCF, how it's has the top, the tags and everything, and then going into Kubernetes, I guess, and then after Kubernetes, learn the other things because as people know, Kubernetes is the base platform, and then everything goes on top of that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess spend the first part, because I think what is it, Kubernetes is like 46% of the exam as well. So
Yeah, it's quite a huge chunk actually.
it's quite a massive chunk. Yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah, so we got so and then go into observability last, app delivery last. That's a little bit of a harder subject.
Mm,
Um, but
yeah.
yeah, I guess container
And
orchestration could debatable. You could almost do that first as well. But yeah, I guess when folks are studying as well, they might get bored of Kubernetes and want to jump into the other one, to mix it up. But yeah,
no, that's definitely good advice. Definitely. But everyone is different, isn't it? Some might start technical, some non-technical,
exactly.
and
Yeah, yeah,
so each to their own. But as you can see, they're all split up, and it's more, for example, the 12-factor app. I think that is mentioned, isn't it? 12-factor app. It's good to know how that works.
mm,
Um, General characteristics of cloud-native architecture. This is definitely good to know on a high level. Um, what else? What else? Auto scaling, serverless. This is quite a fairly new topic, and it's quite scaling up there slowly. Knative and service architecture, and you got serverless with the cloud as well nowadays. So how they implement that in Kubernetes is interesting. Have you got anything to say about serverless? Like any?
maybe just check out Knative, see high level what it does. But yeah, you don't really need to go too deep into it.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of
Um,
cool, there's a few projects for serverless now, like OpenFire. There's probably like maybe 10 or probably even more. But
yeah.
yeah, maybe just go over the graduated ones. Well, or incubating. I think Knative's just applied, so yeah, that's a good place to start to learn.
Definitely, yeah, cloud definitely. I think I'll put probably a link to the cloud ecosystem at the top somewhere. People can refer to it because I think they have to go back to it,
Mm.
isn't it? Back and forth.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, that'd be a good idea.
General, yeah, general community governance. This is fairly. This one I don't know is like it's quite blurred. I think mine to add maybe a few more good resources for this one. What do you think about this one and the
Yeah,
roles on?
we should be doing, well, we will be doing a talk on this in a few weeks, so that should be a good one talking about this. But yeah, it is a little bit, I guess. Let me go through it and have a look. I'll see if I can add some things in there.
Yeah, That'll be good. Most of these actually open standards, roles and personas. That'll be good. And also cloud native observability. So basically monitoring tools and telemetry, Prometheus, cost management. There's a lot of things but this I think it's good to know on a high level. Just read onto it, how it works, how it integrates with the cloud native ecosystem. Because monitoring is very important nowadays, especially. So look into that as well. App delivery. So GitOps nowadays, you hear that quite often, but I'll say look into it. For example, the main at the moment, the main ones are Flux and Argo, and they're both different ones. Obviously, you might think similar, but one is pull and one is push based. So read into that as well. How it's general
There's an introduction to GitOps by the Linux Foundation that's quite good as well.
Yeah, I've linked it here. Where is it?
Okay,
this one, isn't it?
Yeah. I think that's enough to do that course. That's enough for the GitOps one.
Yeah,
because GitOps is a small percentage of the exam as well, so you wouldn't want to go too deep.
Yeah, but
and then
yes, that's true. It's very interesting, so you can't get carried away and just keep reading and reading. On a high level, it's good. CI/CD as well. Good to know how that integrates with Kubernetes, pipelines, and so on. So that's on a overall level. The repo. I'm still adding resources. I might remove some, add some. And if you have anything that you want to add in, if you're on the exam, any insights or anything that can be useful to your community, as long as it's not like actual exam questions that we don't really promote, anything that's useful, notes, anything, feel free to add it in. One thing that I forgot to mention is we are adding practice questions. So on this, I'm thinking of collaborating with yourself and Walid to add resources, come together and just make like a go-to repo for KCNA. So at the moment, I've added a few questions. They're pretty straightforward, some of them, and some are quite insightful as well. So this one, I'm sure you guys know this one. What is smallest unit Kubernetes? Those kind of questions. What does CNCF stand for? For now, I have removed the answers, but I'll probably add them in sometime soon. But we're still adding it. At the moment, we've got 22 questions, but we're still adding more. Just to get you prepped up for the,
This is really cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we should work together on this one and add more questions for this one.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think even before folks start studying, you could just look at these practice questions and say, okay, this is what I need to know. Like, this is how much I don't know, or this is how much I actually do know.
Yeah,
it's a good benchmark.
Good, yeah, exactly. To see like what, that's pretty good. But we're adding more into that as well. So, and towards the bottom, we've got like for example, Slack communities that are really good. So these are actually KCNA exam prep community. I still need to add your one actually, Brad. The reference to the one you have now, isn't it?
Yeah, I can add that in there.
Put that in. The training material, for example, this is the official one by Linux Foundation. That's really good as well. This one is a practice exam which had been released by Andrew Brown. He's also an open source creator. He adds his own, really good practice exam. The one you mentioned earlier, GitOps introduction. This one's will be good to look at if you want to look into SRE and DevOps, on a high level. And I just added some Git stuff here in case haven't GitHub because it will relate to GitOps later and so on. If you want to play around with Git, I think
it's really important now. Yeah, I mean, I've had people say that they want to learn GitOps, but they don't know Git. So it's never be afraid to like, even if you come and you see the case name and you think, well, actually, I need to go back and learn some other, computer science fundamentals. Then don't be afraid to do that as well.
Yeah. So it's quite a good, nice game here. Another great branching game, and this is really good. I used it when I was learning Git a long time ago, so it's really useful. And here's some reading stuff.
I was just going to say it would probably be good. It would probably be good to put like what ones are free and what ones you need to pay for as well. I mean, most of these will be free, won't they?
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I think we should do it in brackets. Yeah, if you guys want to make a pull request and add that, feel free to.
That'll be a good one for people trying to learn Git. So they can do a pull request. Good first issue.
Good first issue. I like that. Some more reading material. And I also put your one. Actually, it's really good. This article by Brad himself, legend himself. This is very, very nice.
I should probably update it. I probably need to update it a little bit more.
Yeah. No, this is really good how he did it. Actually, yeah, this is very nice. So if you guys, folks want to learn, look into KCNA, definitely read this 100%. What else? So as you can see, we're still adding a few things. There's some books, even get good at Kubernetes, or these are not recommended. So I might even put in brackets recommended resources. If you think it's worth it,
Mm.
recommended, not
Yeah,
recommended.
definitely. We
Yeah.
should consider to write a book on the KCNA as well with Wally.
Oof. That's
That
a
could be
good
quite
shout.
cool. Yeah, because
That's a
like
good shout.
it could be
Yeah.
overwhelming, like like having to learn 200 things, like even at a high
Yeah.
level, and a book would really encompass all of it, I think. And it would be nice just to read the book and don't have to be like, oh no, I've got to learn this, I have to learn this. I think it would wrap it quite well.
That's actually a good shout for 2022. Definitely. Yeah, let's do that.
I was gonna write a book once, and then it was just too time consuming because like they had like really strict deadlines of you have to finish this chapter here, and they didn't have like a really good platform or anything. So they're like, can you do it in Word and then send it to me, and then we review it and send it back. And I stopped doing it, but if we could find someone that has like a really good tool where you can collaborate easy, that would be quite easy to make a book, I think.
Yeah, why not? That's definitely a shout. Actually, will come in handy for the years to come as well.
Mm.
Maybe a general cloud native ecosystem book as well. That would be good. So something
Yeah.
along those lines.
Yeah.
We've got some videos here. These are common names you probably hear. Siam is really good. He's a CN7 ambassador also, isn't it?
He is, yeah. Yeah, he's really
Yeah.
good.
Katie, she's actually one of the creators or the courses in it as well. Katie, that's one of the videos, and a few videos
Katie's
by Cloud.
really, really, really good. She had a lot of good videos on the open standards, and I find her name come up a lot when I'm studying. And
Yeah,
especially around, she's done a lot with like Cluster API and Argo. And every time I sort of go to learn a new thing, I see like Katie's done it like a year ago.
yeah.
And
Her articles are really good.
yeah, they're very, very good. Yeah, her medium's very good. So she's
Yeah,
that's who I focused in on when I was studying for the KCNA as well, because I know that just she does everything really well, like her writing and that, and it was really good to study as well. So do check out her Medium. There's a lot of concepts in there, like open standards, where she talks over as well, which is good.
I think we should add maybe a Medium page or something here. We good
Yeah,
to
that's a really good one
reference.
to look over.
Yeah. And then we got what's next? Then we got the repo. So if you have done KCNA and you're looking to look deeper into Kubernetes, you got the Kubernetes CKA, CCAD, CKS, and you can from there on you can just go deeper. But that's up to you. I think that's pretty much most of the repo. Still in under construction, you can say, but at the same time, it's good enough to pray yourself. Any feedback, comments, advice, feel free to make an issue, pull requests. I'm still waiting for the pull requests to come in, guys. So looking forward to them.
How long did it take you to do this?
So it was like an ad hoc thing. So when I started, normally just to get the first the layout, it took me I spent maybe 4 to 5 hours to cook a good layout. And then after that is like whenever I get a chance, I'll just put a resource here and there, get commits. And so but now it's like a more ad hoc thing. Whenever I get a chance, I just put something in. But it's now open now. Community can just add whatever they want, anything useful. Feel free to add something in. So yeah.
Yeah, and if you're studying and you see something that's not in here, like you said, make a pull request. Good excuse to learn some Git as well if you don't know it.
Exactly. Yeah. And what advice would you give to anyone taking the KCNA, like yourself?
And advice, like just general
General
advice.
anything. Yeah.
I think just don't be scared to go back and learn things that are easy, like walk before you can run, and just don't be overwhelmed. It is a very high level, like we're saying. So maybe if we can you bring up the CNCF landscape as well?
Yeah, sure.
That's a good like entry point into this as well. They've just made it a lot easier to read as well. But
Yeah, it's very nice.
just go into here, like see high level what things are.
So SED, for example, we spoke about today. So what SED does.
Yes. So check that out. Distributed reliable key value store, like the
Yeah.
description there. And then that's pretty much all we need. Yeah, look at this container. This one's an important one. So an open source and reliable container at runtime. So generally that's high level. All we need to know, just the name and the description, what it does. That you don't need to go and look through the source code and go crazy, but very high level. Just understand what it does. Maybe watch like a 5-minute introduction to it. That's it. Write your notes down. Move on.
Definitely, yeah. And there's so much to go through. It can get overwhelming, but I think the ones that I don't slightly bigger, the more important ones, isn't it? They are graduated, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I think generally they wouldn't put any ones that aren't either incubating or graduated in the exam, I would imagine.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Because it can be overwhelming for someone new. So yeah, I think I need to link this. I'm surprised I haven't put this in the repo already, but it should be there. Yeah. Is there anything else? Any questions, guys? Or
yeah, I think all the questions have been answered. A lot of people are saying thanks as well, and this is really good talk.
Definitely, I appreciate for inviting me. This kind of event I really like, help with the community. Very nice. Keep it up.
Yeah, no, you've done some amazing work, and I think if people want to reach out to you, you prefer them to reach out to you on LinkedIn or
whatever, LinkedIn, Twitter. I'm more active on LinkedIn, but whatever you think. Twitter, I put my handle there, right? Twitter or LinkedIn, whatever is easy for you guys.
Let me add that as well. I'll just add this up. And yeah, and thanks so much for coming and all your work you've done in the repo. It's very impressive.
Thank you for inviting me. I really appreciate it.
Sure. All right. And yeah, we should look into the book as well, writing the book.
Yeah, definitely. Let's look into that 100%. Sure.
All right. Thanks for coming and thanks everyone, and have a good day, night, wherever you are.
Thank you, Brad. Thank you, the community. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
See ya. Bye.